Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today I am going to be sharing with you 5 particular points that every student, or even before you become a student, should know about careers in psychology. The reason why I want to share this with you is because universities, career services, people in the psychology field that are helping people get onto certain undergraduate degrees in psychology do not tell you that you have to do more than just an undergraduate degree in order to become a psychologist or some kind of psychological practitioner. So I just wanted to share that with you guys so that you know exactly kind of what you're getting yourself in for, and so that halfway down the line you're not like, what the hell is this? So hopefully this video will be super helpful for you. I've also included 5 additional positive points that I want you to know about a career in psychology, because although there are some kind of difficult hardships that you have to go through to get to an actual qualified position, it can be a very rewarding and satisfying career at the end. So I just want to share some of those points with you as well, just to kind of balance out the vibe. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I'm going to share with you 5 points that you need to know before you decide to study a degree in psychology. So the first point that you really want to know about is that when you go for a degree in psychology, you will have to do more than your 3 years of training. Once you finish your undergraduate degree in psychology, you will not be qualified as anything. You will just be a person with a BSc undergraduate psychology degree, which is a great achievement within itself, but it doesn't give you any kind of training or qualifications that you need to be able to actually practice as a therapist. That being said, there are undergraduate degrees out there that offer you some kind of applied clinical practice training. There are. However, a typical 3-year undergraduate degree does not provide you with any kind of training and qualifications in order to practice as a psychological practitioner, and you will have to do a lot more training and experience work to be able to get to the psychological practitioner role that you desire. The second point that I want to make in terms of a career in psychology is that it can take around 7 to 10 years to actually become a psychological practitioner, where you are working as a full-fledged psychologist, for example, or even a full-fledged therapist. You do get a lot of graduate mental health worker roles that get you into a training position where you become like a low intensity therapist, or a therapist that can work with kind of low intensity CBT principles. The reason why it takes so long to get that kind of qualification is because if you think about it, you're dealing with people's well-being and their mental health, which means that you will be having to study a lot about the human brain, the body, psychology, personalities, you know, all the normal kind of mind stuff. All of that obviously will need time to actually kind of gain, and you'll have to take adequate training to be able to then use that information and practice as a psychological therapist. It's kind of like becoming a medic. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, it's not really like a medic, but actually is. Like, give or take 2 or 3 years, you're doing the same amount of years to become a psychologist as you would to become a doctor. Anyway, that aside, I just wanted to kind of share with you guys that it can take a long time for you to actually get into a psychologist role, which is the top end of kind of becoming a practitioner in psychology. So you just want to bear that in mind and make sure that you are committed and passionate to stick out those 7 to 10 years, and know that your personal goals can actually kind of, you know, flow in and out around these kind of professional career goals that you have as well. Some people are like, oh, I just want a career that I'm going to be done with in about like 2 or 3 years, and psychology is really not a career for the people that just want to stop studying after 2 or 3 years, because psychology is a progressive profession, which means that you have to continuously take CPD days and additional training in order to keep up with the kind of humans evolving and different kind of research and theory that we are coming across to help kind of manage our mental health. The third thing to really consider when you are thinking about a career in psychology is that the pay is incredibly limited up until you get to a kind of training role, at least to become some kind of a psychologist or some kind of therapeutic practitioner. In terms of like getting actual experience, a lot of the roles that you get to kind of gain experience typically pay you between kind of like 15 to, I would say, 21,000. And if you're living in London, you would get inner London waiting for some of those roles as well, which means that it would bunk it up by about £5,000. However, sometimes when you are a person, perhaps if you're a mature student, or if you're a person that already has a family and a mortgage and things to actually pay for, then, you know, some of these roles may not give you the sufficient pay that you need to be able to continue those commitments. So again, when you are getting into a career within psychology, you really want to make sure that you have savings or a support network around you that can give you the finances or give you the support financially that you need to be able to pursue your career in psychology. There are student loans and some funded opportunities out there, but again, the student loans only carry you up until kind of like maybe the first masters that you do, and then you get funded roles where you can be kind of paid to do the training and then qualify as well, and continue to be paid. But again, some of these roles are very competitive, so to have an idea that you're just going to do this one year after another can actually be very unrealistic because of the competition out there that can perhaps put you back like a year or two because you weren't able to get onto a certain funding for that year. So that means that you have to wait until the next year. Now, there are some roles out there that give you funding at different times of the year, which means that you can apply a couple of times in the year and hopefully you'll be successful after that. But again, these roles are some of the training roles, graduate mental health worker roles, that pay you around £19,000 to £25,000. And again, that might be sufficient for some people, but for others that have big families or have a lot of financial responsibility, it may not be helpful for you to kind of have that kind of a salary. That being said, when you do get into kind of the training roles for a psychologist, or when you become an accredited therapist, your pay can be bumped up very quickly to what we would say like a band 6, 7, 8A kind of post, because you are then going into some of the senior roles where you are going to supervise others and really look after a team, and in which case your salary would reflect that, especially if you work in the NHS. There's also the option of obviously going privately, which again would help your financial status to increase. But again, it depends on what you charge and how many clients you have and what your portfolio really looks like and how accessible you are. So again, these are the kinds of things that you just want to think about, that at least up until like those 4 or 5 years that you do before you get into those better paid roles will be kind of doing band 2, band 3, even band 4 work, which could be around 17, 18, 19,000 or less. So just keep that in mind, and that doesn't mean that it's not possible for you to get into higher paid roles. This is just the average kind of route or journey that people go through in terms of financials before they get to some of the better paid jobs. The fourth point that I just want to add in terms of careers in psychology is that there's a huge competitive culture that I personally am trying to end, but there is a huge competitive culture within psychology where everybody is trying to rush because of the previous point. They're trying to get to the roles where they get paid a significant amount. A lot of the things that I hear from the students and clients that I work with is that my friends who are a similar age to me are in better paid roles and seem to be flourishing in their careers. People in corporate jobs, in recruitment, or any other kinds of roles might actually get paid a lot more for being a 23, 24-year-old just coming out of university, getting into like a graduate job. You know, they can start on like 35k if they wanted to, but when you're in the psychology careers field, then you will be starting on much less. So it can get very competitive when it comes to the training roles. This means that sometimes you can get over 400 applicants for one kind of job, which means that when you're applying for like the graduate mental health worker roles, you can get like 400 or 500 people for just like 3 posts. And when you get onto kind of clinical doctorate or forensic doctorate or health psychology roles, or even other roles where you're actually getting onto the training for these roles, it can be even more competitive because again, you've got fewer times in the year that people are applying for these roles, and it's just one chance per year. So you'll get some people applying for these roles like year after year after year and still finding it difficult to get on because they just don't make the cut. So again, like, you have to be very committed and very passionate and very aware of how you're going to go about your career in psychology and how you can increase your chances to be able to make it in this career. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because a career in psychology, funnily enough, is about helping people with their well-being and mental health, when actually what it does is it starts to break down the confidence and the mental well-being of future mental health practitioners. You get psychology graduates coming out of university feeling like they really want to help people, they want to make a difference. Because of the competitive culture in psychology, it really starts to break down their confidence and their ability to feel like they're good enough for any of these kinds of roles. So again, you've got to have a bit of a kind of resilient, tough exterior, I suppose, like still feel your feelings, but note that it's not personal and that it's strategical, because there are only limited amount of spaces for certain training roles that everybody just cannot get onto. So even if it takes a couple of years to get onto it, it's not that you're not good enough, it's just that there are limited places available that can only be offered to a limited amount of people. The final thing that I just want to add is that when it comes to careers in psychology, a lot of people are only kind of aware of the funded routes out there. So there's a lot of competition that is going towards those funded routes, when actually there's lots of different roles out there, but there's limited information on them, or you have to sit there on Google for like years finding out what it is that you want to do and then finding out the route that it takes to get to that point. So it's really important to have an idea about what it is that you actually want to do. Do you want to become a specific kind of therapist? Do you want to work with specific kinds of populations and people? Do you have a specialist area in mental health that you want to work with, like trauma or children or domestic violence or disability? Like, what is your area of speciality? So these are the kinds of things that you really want to know, that when you are going into psychology, a lot of people will keep talking about clinical doctorate, and the clinical doctorate, yes, is one of the probably the best routes that you can take, because it gives you a lot of versatile ways of working with people. Like, for example, a clinical psychologist can work in various different settings, from schools and forensic settings and other hospitals and community centres, whereas a forensic psychologist would only be able to work in forensic capacity, in forensic settings. But again, the clinical doctorate is very heavily sought after because of the fact that it gives so many opportunities, and also it's a funded route, which means that you don't have to pay the money back. Also, you would have a position as a clinical psychologist after you finish your training, because again, there are lots of jobs for them once you are actually qualified. Yeah, it's just very competitive and very sought after, but there are different routes out there, and it's important for you to explore those routes and not just be kind of stuck on, I just want to do clinical psychology. Because what you could do as well is you can train as a therapist in an area that you want to really specialize in, for example in psychotherapy or in psychodynamic therapy, or in other kinds of therapy like art therapy, drama therapy, integrative therapy. However, what you could do is, after you finish that and you've done the years that you want to for that, you can then do the clinical doctorate after that if you want to. But a lot of people just want to go straight to that kind of clinical psychologist route, because again, it's funded and it's the one that's kind of like most talked about, and it seems to be the one that everybody's most familiar with. So before we end, I also want to share with you 5 really positive points about careers in psychology, because it can be a greatly fulfilling career once you're actually there helping people and you're in it. But yeah, let's get into that. So the first thing that's really great about a psychology career is that you will thoroughly enjoy it. There's lots of research out there that shows that we are social beings and we like to support each other. So when you are in a job where you are actively being of service to other people, it can be very internally satisfying, and it can give you a real sense of purpose and aim. There's lots of people that come from corporate jobs that are saying, I hate my job, I don't like it, I seem like I'm just in front of the computer all day, every day. And you don't typically hear that from mental health workers. I mean, we have other challenges, of course, but it is very, very fulfilling. And once you find the area that you really kind of vibe with and that you really like, you end up kind of really absorbing that and really getting to know the patients and just having a great time with them. And I remember when I used to work in forensic psychology as a mental health support worker, I loved it so much. Sometimes going to work wasn't even like going to work. It was literally I'm just going to have a chit chat, a friendly chat, I'm going to a social. But obviously I was always about keeping professional boundaries, but because I enjoyed it so much, it didn't feel like work. So it can be so fulfilling and satisfying when you find your area in psychology that you truly, truly vibe with. The next thing that's really great about a career in psychology is that you can really get involved with your community. I mean, you could do this anyway, but when you are kind of inundated with work and stuff like that, it can be really hard to get involved with your community. Whereas when you work in psychology, you kind of already have that mindset about how you can make a difference to the people in your area or the people that are close and around you. So a lot of the times you can get involved in like fundraising events or like charities and just being a part of your community. And I guess that again gives you a lot of fulfillment and it just kind of helps you a lot to gain experience as well for the psychology career. So you're kind of hitting two birds with one stone by getting the experience but also being a key member of your community. This is also really an exciting area because when you think about a career in psychology, it can just be like a couch with a therapist and a therapist talking to the patient and that's it. When actually psychology is a very creative, or can be a very creative career. For example, you've got art therapy, drama therapy, dance therapy, and these are the kinds of things that you can do and get involved in within your community. Again, this can help you a lot with understanding how these kinds of different modalities can help someone with their well-being and maintain their well-being as well. The next thing that's really important about you starting a career in psychology is that, especially if you're a part of the BIPOC community where you are Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, you can make a huge difference to the minority ethnic communities around you. There is a lack of representation of BIPOC communities in senior roles in psychology, and I think we're really working towards like gaining more BIPOC representations. However, you know, if you can start from your position, then this can be a great way to help break down stigma and just kind of bring in a new way of talking about mental health in your community. If you're a person that's a psychology student and you're talking about psychology or mental health at home, that is where it might start. So a lot of the people are like, how can I implement my mental health and psychology learning? And actually it starts at home. If you are psychologically minded and again a mental health enthusiast, then you can start these talks, and that can again spread the word and get the word out there to minority cultures and communities that might have a completely skewed perception of what mental health is, and the stigma that's attached to it might be something that impacts them a lot. Again, this gives you a great opportunity to, you know, be a representative for mental health or for psychology in your own kind of way, not attached to any organization or anything like that, just as a person yourself. If you are psychologically minded and can talk about these things openly and, you know, support other people with it. One thing that you really want to think about when you are considering a career in psychology that makes it amazing is that psychology is not a career that you can rush yourself into, which means that you have to take the steps necessary to gradually build yourself up to become a well-rounded practitioner. This means that you will be very much kind of aware of theory, practices, the way that human emotions work, the way that behaviors work, the way that we think, the way that we feel, the way that we operate. All of these things are amazing, and this can teach you so much about yourself. I think a lot of people get into psychology. I know I was one of them because I was like, what is happening in my head? I need to figure this out. What is wrong with me? When actually now it's like nothing is wrong with me. I'm completely normal and everything that I experience is normal. And it really helps you to understand like how certain patterns and behaviors might have been formed. Obviously it's not easy to apply theory and practice onto yourself, but it does again make you a lot more kind of aware of the ways that certain things impact you and influence you. And again, this is a great kind of understanding to have, especially if you're a psychological practitioner that is working with other people, because you can pass on that information to other people as well. So again, like it's a career that you have to really take your time in, so that you are gradually building up the knowledge, the information, the awareness that you need to be able to become a fully fledged, amazing, well-rounded psychological practitioner. The final thing that's great about a career in psychology is that we're definitely evolving with the times. Back in the days, there was this idea that psychological professionals are very kind of closed off. They don't really tell people about themselves, they don't talk about themselves, and they get to hear everything about the patient, when actually things are changing now, where we are definitely finding more of a balance between the information that we share about ourselves and the things that we hear from patients as well. This is in the sense that actually, rather than us being closed off and kind of staying away from social media and things like that, you'll find a lot of therapists and psychological practitioners now coming up on social media and starting their careers on there as well. And this is really exciting because again, it gives you an opportunity to be super creative and to share a lot of helpful psychoeducational information with people that might benefit from it. But equally, we've got to understand that there are still professional boundaries and things that need to stay in place to make sure that the information that we share is helpful and safe, and to make sure that we aren't kind of inviting people to use any of the strategies that we might talk about if they are not helpful for them. Everything has to be contextualized, everything is individual. So again, like, you're sharing information for the sake of just putting information out there, but again, it's a great way to build your career and to just see the different kinds of speaking opportunities and events and things that you can do as a therapist. So that concludes our video for today. I hope you found it helpful. Please do link your comments in the comment section below. I don't even know why I said link your comments, because you would literally type your comments. Type your comments in the comment section below and let me know what you think about the points that I've made. If you want any kind of one-to-one additional support in terms of coming up with a career plan, if you are confused about whether you should do psychology or not, just hit me up in the emails or send me a DM on Instagram at my psych career coach on Instagram. I already said that, on Instagram. Anyway, hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. This leaves you. Oh, I just bit the side of my face.